Welcome to our deep relaxation class. Enjoy.
Welcome everyone. My name is Bryan Nupp and I'm the instructor for our deep relaxation class tonight. I'm so glad and grateful that you choose to continue to come back and participate in these virtual class offerings. That shows there's a commitment to your own well-being by continuing to show up here. We're going to start our practice in a seated position. If you do have access to yoga blocks, you might want to grab some of those. I also ask that you grab a blanket tonight, and I've already rolled my blanket up. So if you want to just take a moment to do that now, you can. You're going to want something that's about as wide as your yoga mat, and then you can just go ahead and take that and just very lovingly kind of smooth out any wrinkles or hard edges and roll that blanket on up. And we're going to use these props in our practice tonight. So once you have those things set up, you can just leave them and then go ahead and come into a comfortable seated position. You could be sitting on the floor. I'm sitting up on a yoga bolster, just something to bring my hips up above my knees. That's going to make this a little more sustainable. Of course, you could always come to sit on the edge of a chair or couch or wherever it is you're practicing in your house. So once you've found that comfortable seat, try and find that balance between ease and effort. So we want to make sure we're sitting up tall and erect, but not so much where we feel like we're straining to be here. And we also don't want to start to slump, sort of slump. I know for those of us that work indoors or office kind of jobs where we're typing a lot, there's a lot of sort of tendency to kind of get into here. And this is a really exhausting place to spend any amount of time if we really want to focus on lifting, lengthening through the torso, broadening across the chest. So there's that engagement, that effort, and that balance between ease and effort. Just kind of take a moment to check in and find your midline. You could do this by closing the eyes and just intuitively feeling, but you might need a little movement to kind of help identify that midline of the body, that line that travels up through the spine. You do this by just gently rocking forward and back, just sort of shifting side to side. See if you can find that central line, that point of balance in your body. We're going to begin our practice in this comfortable seat. We're going to begin with a mindfulness exercise. This is called the Soothe, Soften, and Allow mindfulness practice. This is a practice of mindfulness, mindful awareness, and compassion for yourself. So without further ado, close your eyes, or just let your eyes remain relaxed and comfortable. Just begin to feel into your body, but not just your physical body, your mental and emotional body. Just take a few deep breaths to begin the mindfulness practice. Begin by becoming mindfully aware of your breath and where you feel your breath in your body. without judgment or in-depth analysis. Just simply become aware of your breath in your body. A lot of us might have come to this class because we're hoping to de-stress or untangle some kind of physical pain. And so whatever it is that brought you here tonight for your practice, I want you to become aware of that. And can you locate that as it manifests in your physical body? You might feel the residual effects of some kind of strenuous physical activity. And maybe you can locate that in your body. Or maybe it's a little bit more subtle and elusive, like fleeting anxiety. And see if you can locate that in your physical body. Where is it that you're holding this thing in your body? Once you've found that spot in your body, bring your attention to it and breathe into that place. If it helps, you could even label it. Might even say something like, oh, that's that tension in my back. That was from that 4 nights sleep the other. Or that's where I maybe tried to push too hard. Just allow yourself to experience whatever story might arise with that physical sensation that you pinpointed in your body. Once you've identified the place, once you've created a label or an explanation or story, now we're going to bring in the practice. Soothe, soften, and allow. We're going to use our breath like an ultra healing balm that can permeate the mental, emotional, and physical body. Use your breath to soothe that space. For example, I'm choosing to focus on a particular spot on my back. I'm just going to use my mental awareness, my attention, to focus on that spot and breathe into it. And I could even just gently repeat the word soothing awareness. Then begin to soften your awareness beyond that one place. Softening your awareness around that space, beyond that space. So bringing in that soothing mindfulness, that breath awareness, and applying it like a healing balm. We've given our minds the opportunity to identify the story, to identify and become aware of that thing we're carrying. We're soothing it right now with our breath, with our loving awareness. I feel that loving awareness just creating a softness within and around you now. Now, all you have to do is allow yourself to be here. Just allow yourself to observe the experience. Allow yourself to be here. It's so easy to get hung up on one little thing that might be wrong. It's like the story of the lion that had the splinter in its paw. It really ruined his whole day. But there's so much more to that beautiful, powerful lion than the little splinter in his paw. This practice gives us the power to become aware, to soothe, soften, and allow. With your next inhalation, reach your hands up and overhead, with your palms facing one another. And then exhale, bring the hands to touch, let the hands travel down through the midline. Inhale again, repeat. Simply lift the hands up and overhead. Soothe, soften. Make your best effort. 3 more breaths. Inhaling and exhaling. One more time, just like that. Big breath in. Exhale. Your hands rest in front of the chest a moment. We'll just take a brief stretch through the head and neck. Look over one shoulder. Turn the head and neck as far as you comfortably can. Even stretch the eyes, looking over that shoulder with the eyes. And then slowly bring the head and neck back to center and look over other shoulder. Pause for a breath. And then repeat once more on each side. This time, inhale, bring the head and neck back to center. Press your hands out wide to the side. Start to make some big, sweeping circles. Let the hands lead the movement. Watch as your arms follow the hands. And feel your shoulders allow the movement. Good. Now go ahead and keep your hands out to the side. We're going to practice one more mindful movement series in our comfortable seat. We're going to start by inhaling and turning the fingers to face behind you, pulling the shoulder blades together. Keep your core engaged and lengthened here. And then as you exhale, you're just going to simply rotate the hands forward. Inhale, rotate the wrists back. Maybe even just pull the shoulder blades together, lift and open your heart. And then exhale, just rotate through the wrists until you point the fingers forward. Observe what's going on with the shoulders as the hands lead the movement. Twice more. Let the palms rest face up on the knees or in your lap. Just tuck the chin towards the chest. Drop the head and neck side to side. Feel that nice stretch in the neck. If you want to, you could even take a free hand and just start to just walk the fingers around any areas that feel tight in the neck. So just kind of massage and flick the tension away. Time to enjoy this process of relaxation. When you're ready, you can move to the other side. Just touch the chin with the chest. Drop ear to the same side of the shoulder. If you want to, you can take a hand and just explore a gentle massage, or even just pressing very gently against the collarbone. Stay with that mindful breath awareness practice. Every time that you feel a stretch, see if you can bring your breath awareness into that stretch. Take you so much deeper into your breath. We're going to make our way onto our hands and knees now. We're not going to be here all that long, but if you needed to use your blanket to cushion the knees, or if you need to grab a pillow or something, or if you want to even just fold up your mat, you could do that now. We're going to come into our all fours position. I'm just going to unroll my blanket and bring underneath my knees. We're going to move through just some back freeing movements with a simple cat-cow practice. Now you'll notice my fingers are spread really wide here. I've got my hands stacked right under elbows, right under front shoulders. My knees are stacked right under my hips. And I'm really lengthening through the spine here. Turn to the side so you can see. As I inhale, I'm going to tilt the tailbone away, draw the shoulder blades back together, lengthening the crown of the head forward, lifting the chest. As I exhale, I'm going to gently scoop the hips under, round through the spine, pressing the floor away. And that belly up and in, and then inhale again. Into the cow stretch. Exhaling back through. I'm just going to take about the next 30 to 45 seconds to explore this cat-cow series. You can even start to kind of just roll the body, exploring the hip movements and any other movements through the spine here. At any point you need to take a rest, you can come into what's called child's pose or puppy pose by widening your knees slightly, walking the hands up front, and maybe resting the head down onto a cushion or a block or the floor. We're going to meet in child's pose as soon as we're done our cat and cow pose. If you need to get there a little sooner, it's always available to you. And stories and thoughts arise during the practice. Simply let them arise. Don't get too lost in them. I used to use the sort of visual imagery of like a volume knob. And if I noticed my mind was getting really noisy, I would just use that visual imagery of just turning the volume down, retuning back into that frequency, inner stillness. I'm going to go ahead and shift into child's pose or puppy pose. If you're wondering what the difference is between the two, puppy pose is going to be a little more something like this. Show you from the side. Puppy pose, I'm going to keep the knees actually closer together, and I'm going to walk the hands out in front, and everything is really going to stay inside the shoulders and hips here with puppy pose. You might not even let the forearms touch the floor, and kind of just gripping the floor with your hands. Just let the weight shift back into the hips. Now our child's pose, on the other hand, turn back to face front here. I'm going to let my knees come a little bit wider outside of the hips and shoulders. You can keep your toes tucked under, or you can untuck the toes here, your choice, and then you can sink back into child. You're going to feel probably more of a release in the thoracic spine in the middle of the back. In that puppy pose, you'll probably feel more of a stretch in the lower back and lumbar spine with your child. Very good. We're going to come back up to that tabletop position where we practiced cat and cow a couple minutes ago. All right. Turn to the side again so you can see this next part of our practice. We're going to come into sort of our first back bend of the practice, but we're going to do so very gradually in a couple of stages. We're going to start on the right side, and all you're going to simply do is press this right heel up toward the ceiling, and this right knee is going to come across and just tap on the outside edge of left knee. And then we're going to bring it back, and we're going to tap that knee again. So working on strengthening and stabilizing this right glute, and we're using our core to stay engaged here. So you can simply just press up through the heel, cross and lower. Just do that about 5 times on each side. Do once or twice more on this side. Good. Go ahead and switch. Let's go ahead and practice that on the other side. So left side now. We can go ahead and lift, pressing that heel up, and then cross, tap, lift, lower, lift, cross, lower. We can do that 2 or 3 more times on the side. Go ahead and come back to center. Let's just come up off of our hands and wrists. Go ahead and interlace your fingers, clasp the palms together. We're just going to give our wrists a break. Slowly roll the wrists out. And then go ahead and switch the grip to a non-dominant grip. Do the same thing. Roll the wrists out. Now be careful how much pressure you put down into your wrists, but turn the hands to face forward and just gently see if you can bring your fingers or palms onto the floor, sort of a reverse hand tabletop, just gently pressing down. That's it all painful. Have to. All right. Go ahead and shake the wrists out. Come back to that tabletop position. We're going to move into our tabletop bow pose. So we'll start with the right side again. I'm going to cross this time, just like we did. Just this time, I'm going to reach around with the left hand, and I'm going to press that right foot up behind. Now, I'm noticing that when I have my thumb face down here, it sort of rounds this shoulder forward. So I'm going to observe what happens when I turn that left hand thumb face up, grabbing a hold of the outside edge of the foot, and then pressing that foot up for our back bend here. If you're having a hard time grabbing that foot, you could simply come back and just press that heel up and feel that heart opening back bending pose right there. If you can grab a hold of the foot, great. If not, no worries. Just stay there for 4 or 5 rounds of deep breathing. Lengthen through the spine. We're ready to switch. Release the foot, cross. You need to take a little break. Go ahead. Let's switch and do the other side. Right hand to left foot now. Each side is going to be a little bit different. Soothe, soften, allow. Whatever you need from this practice. Side, ready, release. We're going to come back down to child's pose or puppy pose. We're going to come into a lateral stretch, meaning we're going to stretch the side bodies now. So you're going to walk your hands over to one side and then shift the weight back to the opposite hip. For example, I've walked my hands over to the right side, especially this left hand. I'm going to see if I can just tiptoe that left hand out. And I'm going to pull and anchor the weight back towards my left hip. So hands over to the right, hips back to the left, relax the head and neck. If you're ready, walk your hands back to center. Bring your hands all the way over to the other side and repeat on the other side. So hands over to the left this time. Weight anchors back to the right hip. Awesome. We're going to do it one more time each side. So take your time to walk the hands back over to your starting side. Take it for 3 breaths. Switch. Go ahead and come back to the center of your mat. We're going to come back into the tabletop position. And then from tabletop position, we're going to move into our plank. All right. Now you might like to just have your plank be just here, shifted forward. So let me just show you. So from our tabletop, all I've done is walk my hands forward and shift forward into a either knees down plank, or you can lift the knees and come up here. All right. Now, this spacing between hands and feet is the same spacing that we're going to adopt for our downward facing dog. All right, so for downward facing dog, all you're going to have to do is lift those hips up and shift your center of gravity up. You should have about 2 fist distance between the feet. And just to check your spacing, you can shift forward again, back into that plank, knees down or up, your choice. And back to down dog. You could even do this a few times. Shifting forward into your plank, and then back to downward dog. The head and neck relax. Even gently shake out the head and neck. Break anytime you need to. Otherwise, we're in that downward dog and we're really starting to feel that stretch in the hamstrings, that lengthening through the spine. You might even try for a split dog, reaching one leg up behind you. Then when you're ready, we're going to walk the feet all the way up. Inhale, come up halfway into prepare pose. So you can bring your hands up to your knees, shins or thighs, and then exhale. Just relax the hands down, head and neck relax. Inhale, let's come all the way back up to standing. Exhale, hands touch. Take a moment to catch breath. Bring the hands to rest in front of the chest. Inhale, stretch the hands up and overhead. Little bend backwards as you press the hips forward. Exhale, hinge from the hips. Really important to hinge from the hips here and not round in the back. Keep the back straight as best you can. And then inhale up halfway. So the torso is parallel to the floor. Exhale, release. Keep a deep bend in the knees. That's going to help protect the lower back here. Inhale slowly all the way back up. Exhale, hands touch in front of the chest. After you have your yoga blocks, let me show you those could come in handy. Also keep that blanket close by because we're going to use that really soon. So you could bring your hands down to your blocks here, or if you had a chair or something you could rest your arms on, that would be great too. We're going to move through another round of the sun breathing. We're going to grab our blanket, and I'm just to show you here, I have it sort of folded out. I'm going to roll it up just 2 or 3 times, not so it's super thick, so it just has a little bit of an edge that I can actually bring the arches of my feet up onto. So I'm actually going to stand on this blanket roll now with my heels on the floor and the arch of my foot resting on the curvature of that blanket. It's going to be a little tricky to balance on initially, so I want you to really take your time. Make sure you can settle your feet into the blanket. You might even have to kind of just step off and rework that blanket roll. You want just a little something so the feet can stay in a flexed position, and we're going to be balanced back on the heels with just a little bend in the knees. So hopefully you can see that. Now we're going to move through a couple of rounds of sun breathing with the blanket. Take your time. It's going to be a little unusual. It's going to be a little bit more of like a balance challenge, but we're just going to very mindfully breathe through it. Exhale, hands touch in front of the chest. Inhale again, stretch the arms and body long. Inhaling. Exhale, hinge from the hips. Hands to blocks, shins to the floor. Inhale up halfway, lengthen. And exhale, relax the torso down. Inhale, take your time, rise with a straight back all the way up. Hands come up last. And exhale, hands touch in front of the chest, shoulders relax. Good. Observe that difference between feet flat versus feet flexed. Go ahead and complete 1 or 2 more rounds of sun breathing on your own. Take your time to really rest in one of those forward folds and really feel that stretch and release through the hamstrings, calves, and ankles here. So at your own pace, guided by your own breath, go ahead and begin. Each movement is guided by an inhalation or exhalation. You want to pause for a few breaths in any one particular part of the series. That's great. It's time that you return to a standing position. Bring the hand touch in front of the chest. Pause there with your feet still on the blanket. And go ahead and just slowly relax the hands and step back off of that blanket. And just take a moment to observe. You might even feel an inch or two taller. We're going to come back to some more stretches for the hamstrings. While we're standing here, we're just going to rotate the hips. So resetting the hips and lower back. We have that oxygen-rich blood flowing. Hamstrings, back. Just go ahead and pause and switch the direction of your hip circles. If you want to, you could even have the feet really wide. Having a little bit of a hinge there. Go ahead and take 15 or 20 seconds to explore any other variations with your hip circles. Breathing slowly and deeply. So we're going to come back down to a kneeling position, but in case it's a challenge for you to be on your knees, I'm going to show you a way you can complete this this half split pose series from a standing position also. So I'm going to show you that first. Since we're already standing, you might want to move through it and just stay in a standing position. I'm going to show you from a low lunge also. So I'm going to start by stepping my left foot forward. All you're going to need for this are your blocks or, again, a chair. You could definitely use a wall also to rest your hands against. So I'm going to try and keep my feet about hip distance apart. I've got my left foot just a comfortable step out in front. I'm going to keep a little bend in that front knee. And so by all purposes, I'm in a warrior one pose here. Okay. If you're going to complete this from that standing position, keep your hands on your hips. Keep a little bend in that front knee, just so you're not hyperextending. I'll show you from the side in just a moment. If you're going to complete this sequence standing, all you're going to do, hips level, core engaged. You're going to inhale, stand up tall. You could even bring the hands up and overhead, or you can just keep your hands on those hip flexors, like those two front belt loops. I'm just going to gently hinge forward, very much like we just did, but with this left foot out in front. You're going to feel that big stretch down the back of the leg. You might even keep your hands on a block or set of blocks. Then you're going to inhale, bend that front leg and come back up. And then exhale, straighten that front leg and move back forward. From the side, I'll show you one time, then we're going to come down into low lunge if you're not already there. So I've got my hips core engaged, lengthening through the spine. Forward. I'm going to come down onto my knee now. I'm going to cushion that back knee. I'm going to do something very similar here. So if you're standing, you want to keep going with the standing sequence, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to come down to this low lunge. All right. Just want to make sure I have enough room to hinge, so you can always kind of lengthen this way through the legs. And I'm going to keep this front foot flexed. So you might see my toes are lifted, just heel on the floor. I'm going to do something very similar. You can keep the front leg straight, or you could keep that foot planted if you prefer. And then I'm just going to shift the hips back and then lift the toes. If you're in a low lunge, I want you to keep your hands on some kind of support and keep your hands directly under the shoulders. And just like a wave, I'm going to up. And exhale, hips gently shift back. Right center of the chest. We're sort of progressively, dynamically stretching this left hamstring. And one thing that's important here, it's a little bit easy for the hips to kind of come out of alignment. So I want you to really focus on keeping those hips right next to each other. Left hip not coming too far out in front, but instead both your hips moving together, stabilize. In fact, you can even bring the intention of pulling that left glute back. This applies if you're still standing and stretching. We'll just do that 3 more times on the side. Anytime you can pause and hold in a static stretch, breath awareness. When you're ready, you can switch. If you're standing, you just come back to center, shift feet. If you're in this low lunge, you might come through a downward facing dog to shift. And step that other foot forward, lower left knee down. So again, either on a low lunge or standing, we're going to complete the same sequence on the other side. So again, really important to try and keep the hips level here. Even just staying in this low lunge, you'll probably feel a big stretch through that opposite quad and hip flexor. Side might be a little bit different, so just honor and respect that. Take your time. Slowly begin to shift. Straightens, hinging from the hips. Trying to keep that knee over ankle in that low lunge. you're ready for that static stretch, if you want, like just continue to some moving meditation, going back and right in your half split. You can just simply just push that front foot forward or lift that back foot at any point too. You could, from a low lunge, tuck the back toes and lift that. These are all just different variations of the same stretch. You would just stay with your breath. More time, one more cycle. Awesome. And then when you're ready, we're gonna actually come down to sit. So if you're in that low lunge, you might come back to down dog or just step that back foot forward. We're gonna come down to sit with our legs out front. Again, I like to have my props for this seated forward fold sequence. There's a couple different ways you can use that. Again, I like to use the blanket just underneath of my sitting bones, something to help kind of stabilize and support through my hips and lower back. And I've noticed that my hamstrings, although they're feeling a lot more limber than they were, are still pretty tight. So with that said, I'm going to grab something to support a little bend in the knees. So you might use a couch pillow or another blanket or your blocks to bring underneath the knees. You might not find that you need that. It's okay. If you have a strap or something to hook the feet with, that would be appropriate use here too. Otherwise, you can just let the hands relax by the side. We're going to inhale, sit up really tall. And we're going to isolate that hinging movement. We've done a lot of hinging from the hips, kind of lengthening the spine, stretching the back of the body. We're going to continue to do so now with this hinging movement in our forward fold. And this will be guided by breath, the dynamic movement. If you'd like to, you can even bring the hands all the way up and overhead. And then exhale, hinging from the hips, reaching out. Again, we're finding that balance between ease and effort. We're not straining. Balance.
Hi, Brian. I think your voice got tinny. Like it's hard to hear you. I don't know if you could just reset your
Turn the
sound.
sound off. Turn it back.
Sounds good.
Testing. Testing.
You're beautiful. Thank you. Back.
All You just go ahead and move through about another 30 to 45 seconds of your forward fold, defining your range of motion. Bringing that same mindful breath awareness practice back into the sequence. When you're ready, come all the way back up to your tall seat. You can complete the cycle by bringing the hands up and overhead for one last big breath in. And slowly relax the hands down. Go ahead and remove your props. So we're going to utilize this blanket now one last time. Folded as such. I'm going to roll that blanket out, or roll it up rather. A nice, tight, snug blanket roll. Now we're sort of going to use this blanket rolled up as such, kind of like a foam roller, but it's going to be a lot softer and a lot more forgiving to our backs than the hard packed plastic of a foam roller. We're going to use it in a very similar kind of way to kind of floss in between our vertebrae. So let me go ahead and show you how we're going to do that. So I've shown you how the blanket's been rolled up. I'm going to come to sit in front of that blanket so that it's actually tucked right underneath of my lower back there. And then very slowly and mindfully, I'm just going to lean on back. It might be easier to do this from the side, so I can still verbally guide you through this and let you see. Now, if you notice that your roll is a little bit too thick and it's uncomfortable, you could simply unroll it a couple of times, or vice versa. If you needed a little bit more, you could grab an additional blanket or roll it up a little bit further. I'm going to keep my feet on the ground here. Ooh, and I'm going to just begin to notice how my body responds to that blanket roll. At any point in time, you can press down into the feet and just lift the hips and readjust that blanket. And there's two basic movements that we're going to use to get the most benefit from this blanket roll. The first is just a very gentle windshield wiper movement side to side. As we're using the soft curvature of that blanket to massage the vertebrae and the spine, all those muscles and nerves attach to our spine. Stabilize our hips. All right, so the windshield wiper movement is how you'll start each cycle or each repetition, whatever you want to. The next movement is that isolated pelvic tuck and tilt, just like in our cat and cow. It's a little bit more subtle here, but I'm going to scoop the hips up and drop the glutes back down. I'm just going to do that about a dozen times. Really going to feel the benefits of this once we're done. I already start to feel. At any point where you need to just pause and take it slow, do whatever you need to do to make this accessible. If it just is extremely uncomfortable or painful at any point, you can simply lift the hips, slide the blanket out, and just rest here on your back. We're getting close to that point in class anyway. Once you've completed your windshield wipering and that gentle cat and cow movement through the hips, you're just going to take this blanket, keep it in that same tight roll, and just move it up to the next set of vertebrae, so just the width of that blanket. And then go ahead and continue to repeat all the way up to the base of the shoulder blades, and then come all the way back down to that space right underneath the hips and lower back. You could do this same kind of sequence without the blanket and get a similar kind of benefit. There's something about this sort of visceral massage bar of the blanket that really makes this such a wonderful tool, if you will, for practice. Looks like you're using the blanket like a rolling pin to roll out the back. Once you've finished with the practice, you can remove the blanket roll. You might use it as a little cushion for the back of the head and neck. And then simply hug the knees in towards the chest and rest. Just feel the effects of that spinal care with the blanket. Feel that release once you remove the blanket and hug the knees in towards the chest. Go ahead and make sure that the sides of your mat are clear. Bring your arms out into a T shape. Stack your knees right over top of your hips. And then we're just going to very slowly drop the knees to one side, just about halfway. Pause. Go ahead and come back to center. Take a deep breath in. Exhale to the other side, halfway. Pause. Go ahead and do that 3 more times on each side. You might like to keep a prop or something close by so that when it comes time, you can bring something underneath of or in between the knees to support you in this spinal twist. Once you bring the knees back over to the right, go ahead and let the knees relax down. And you might like to have that support. Try and keep both shoulder blades on the floor, arms extended out from the shoulders. And if your knees are folding over to the right, you can look over opposite shoulder. Ready? Take your time. Bring your knees back to center and switch. You might like to have that prop or something underneath the knees for the other side. Head and neck can look over opposite shoulder. Enjoy these next few breaths. When you're ready, take your time. Come back to center, hug the knees in towards the chest. Nice little rock side to side. Simply extend the legs long, come to Shavasana. If you prefer to close practice in a seated position, you can take your time to come back there now. Let's take a couple more minutes to rest in awareness. There's a sort of trust and surrender that comes with this final part of our practice where we rest and do nothing. Such an important part of the practice where we give our bodies physically, emotionally, mentally the space to assimilate all the benefits from our practice. You're welcome to stay here in this relaxed space for as long as you need to. Simply resting in loving awareness. And scan through the body and instruct each part of your body to relax, to rest, restore. Or you can simply rest and allow yourself to be in a space of loving awareness. Resting, loving. If you wish, you can remain in space for as long as it serves you. Resting, relaxing, being. If you'd like to join us in closing practice, you can do that too. Turning to a seated position with the hands touching in front of the center of the chest. Take your time, whenever you decide, be unrushed. Be slow and mindful with your movement. Stay connected to the deep peace of that space. Deep peace of the present. Close our practice with the sound of Om, the primordial sound. Exhaling completely, inhaling for Om. Let your head bow towards the heart. Mind, body, and heart realign. Programmed for peace, relaxation. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you so much for taking this time to participate in this practice. Hope you feel relaxed, renewed, restored. Go with peace.